AJ Dybantsa is probably the most talented prospect in the 2026 NBA draft. Let us tell you why he might be slightly underrated on Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On NBA with no ceilings. As always, thank you for making us your very first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Like always, my name's Albert Gim, here with my co-host, Corey Tulaba. Not just Corey Tulaba, but Corey, probably the best pizza maker in all of the Northeast. Corey, I saw recently you made a beautiful pepperoni pizza,
Yes.
and I've really enjoyed your pizza journey, Corey. If you can today, let us know, let our listeners know, our viewers know, how are you doing? And also talk to us a little bit about that beautiful pepperoni pizza.
Your boy's doing amazing. I've had a couple of amazing days on Long Island, from the beaches to the wineries, to getting some lobster rolls out in the Hamptons. It's been unbelievable. As far as the pizza goes, I mean, this is my true passion outside of scouting basketball. And, my wife got me a pizza oven for Father's Day, and I just been going crazy. So, kept it simple this week. Pepperoni, drizzled hot honey on top. Just for a little extra. So kept it simple, but we're going crazy the next one. And, we'll be doing the deep dish video series where I talk ball and make pizza this year a lot. So I'm excited about that.
Incredible. Corey, the balance of sweet and savory plus spicy plus saucy, just incredible. Really, really incredible. I love that.
Yeah. A lot like AJ Dybantsa's game.
Oh, you beat me to it. But yes, absolutely. There is a beautiful mix of skills and talents that AJ Dybantsa brings to the floor. Corey, if you can, let's get in the lab a little bit with you. If you can give us that initial intro to AJ Dybantsa's game. Tell us the numbers. Tell us the counting stats. Tell him where he's awesome. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, so AJ Dybantsa is somebody that, if you're following the draft, obviously you have heard of him. If you're just joining us fresh, AJ Dybantsa is an incredibly impressive prospect, top 3 pick as of right now. He can be 1, he could be 2, he could be 3, depending on who you talk to. He is originally from Brockton, Massachusetts. He will be playing at BYU, making somewhere reportedly like $7 million in NIL money this year. The U.S. Listed him at 6'8". This summer at the 2024 Nike Hoop Summit, where he played for Team World, he measured at 6'9" in shoes, 201 pounds, 8'10" standing reach, 6'11" wingspan, 9.5 inch hand length and width. He will be 19.4 years old on draft night. Now, Synergy has 40 games at Utah Prep this year, where he averaged 26.4 points, 9.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 3.1 turnovers, 1.6 steals, 0.8 blocks on 51, 35, 80.5 splits. That 35% was on 6.2 3-point attempts per game, and he got to the line 8 attempts per game. 57.3 effective field goal percentage, 63 true shooting percentage. So unbelievable scorer, incredibly efficient. Some accolades. He's a 3-time gold medalist with Team USA. He was the FIBA U19 World Cup MVP. Maybe a little controversy there. A lot of people think it was Michael Brown, but facts are the facts. He won that award. He was a McDonald's All-American, played in the Nike Hoop Summit games back-to-back years, one with Team World, and then most recently with the U.S. team.
A lot there.
Yes.
A lot of good. And that's to be expected, Corey. We're talking about one of the consensus top 3 guys heading into the 2026 college basketball season, NBA draft season. Corey, when it comes to AJ Dybantsa, something that I wrote in my notes that I wanted to address today is he's actually somebody that we've gotten to see up close and personal, not just playing in games, but working out, practicing, going through stuff, right? Going through work with Team USA, also Team World at the Nike Hoop Summit in the last 2 years. A really interesting prospect. And Corey, for me, the reason why I'm so excited to do this pod with you today is that, like I said in the cold open, I am starting to wonder if because of all the hype that Darren Peterson's getting and Cam Boozer is getting, and we've been a part of that, right?
Yeah.
Wondering, are we kind of in a world now where AJ Dybantsa might potentially be slightly underrated heading into this season? Is kind of where my head is at. And so, Corey, obviously right now, this first portion, we always get into the offense. If you could, Corey, and for me, when it comes to AJ Dybantsa, there's something that's just so inherently smooth and natural about his offensive game. And so something I wanted to ask you, Corey, if you could kind of give us like 1+, 1-, and then maybe like one underrated aspect of his offensive game, just trying to add a little structure to what we're doing here.
Yeah. I mean, for a plus, I think he makes superstar shots. You know, he's 6'9", and he can hit every tough shot in the book. You know, he can spin over both shoulders. He can hit fadeaways. He likes getting to the midi. He can shoot it off the bounce from deep. And, you know, basically any shot in the book that you want him to hit, he has in his bag. Where that becomes a negative sometimes is, and much like other star scoring prospects, you could say this of Darren Peterson as well, sometimes his shot selection, because he's capable of making these tough shots, his shot selection gets, you know, to be a little questionable. You know, so I think that, you know, you need to find that balance. And I think as far as being underrated, you know, I kind of think his shooting is becoming a little underrated. You know, I think there's a little bit of like a panic for him as just like a natural scorer or shooter rather. And he's considered a scorer, and he is. He's a shot maker more than he is a shooter. But I think people are over analyzing the jump shot a little bit too much. You know, at Utah Prep in those 40 games, in catch and shoot shots, he was 36.6 overall, but he was 39.5% on unguarded attempts. That was 38 attempts unguarded, 131 overall. So he was 35.5% on 93 guarded attempts. So he's mostly taking very tightly contested jump shots. But when he has a clean look, I think he's a good shooter. I think he's got a solid base. The follow through is good. I mean, he front rims a lot of his misses. But it's not like he shoots a super flat ball. It's not like a Cam Boozer moon ball, but
Right.
I think the arc is fine. The touch is pretty good. He just takes a lot of tough shots. And then you look at, you know, his percentage at FIBA, and I think he was at like 12% from three in that FIBA tournament, but it's truly such a small sample size that I think that people are over indexing on that as far as what his shooting could look like. Because if we're looking at his 40 games at Utah Prep, you know, 35%, it's not excellent, but it's not disastrous either. You know, Darren Peterson, who we love, you know, we did a breakdown on him for an hour on the No Ceilings feed. You know, we said that, you know, he's also similarly a shot maker versus shooter, and he shot 1% better as far as the games that Synergy had that we could use the stats for. So I think he's become an underrated shooter.
Got it. No, Corey, I actually love that specifically just because, and to your point, you mentioned the catch and shoot jumpers, Corey. Something that I did also want to note is that like of his catch and shoot jumpers, and this is also according to Synergy, 71% of them were guarded. Right. And I think that speaks to a lot of different things. Right. And I think the first point that you made, right, about him being able to make superstar jumpers, there is a superstar element to his game, but also with that, in tandem with that, Corey, I like that he had the confidence to take all those superstar jumpers, right? If we're looking at a guy who's going to be a consensus top three guy, we want to know that he has not just the ability, but also the confidence to take those shots. And as you mentioned, Corey, sometimes to his detriment, he took too many of them at times. And for me, I understand that, but I also believe that's something that you can kind of rear in. You can, you know, adjust that a little bit. But what I care more about was the confidence. And we've said this on podcasts before, Corey, but there is this thing where when it comes to shooting and we're looking at like superstar potential, one of the things that we're looking at is not only, you know, how the jumper looks, but are you willing to take them? Do you have the confidence? Do you have the self-belief that in a big moment when your team needs a bucket, are you going to be willing to take that responsibility on your shoulders and be that lead guy? And so, Corey, I actually really love what you said about him. And I just love that he's got that confidence. And to kind of take that to another level, Corey, the way I put it in my notes is there's almost an arrogance to him, right? And that's something that we even saw at the Hoop Summit, the way that he carried himself, right? The aura that he has. He walks into the gym with the belief that, oh, I'm the best player here. And something that I noticed, Corey, even watching his film, it doesn't matter who was guarding him. He had this air about him where he was almost offended that the other team put whoever on him. And something I was thinking, like, I wrote this even in my notes, you could put Ron Artest on him and he would be offended. Like, he's that type of guy where he's got that much confidence, right, Corey?
Yeah.
And so something that I wanted to ask you, right? That type of confidence, that type of self-belief, for you as a scout, thinking about his future outlook as an offensive player, how do you kind of quantify all of that? And where does that kind of end up leaving you in terms of what you believe he can be as a player?
Well, I'm glad that he feels that way about himself as his talents, because I truly believe he's one of the more talented wing prospects that we have seen in a really long time, because I think that he has a chance to be an elite NBA scorer. And I think he has a chance to be an all-NBA player. I think where that materializes is, okay, you have that confidence, you believe in yourself. Now you have to carry yourself as a superstar in every aspect, because now you're under a microscope, because we are projecting greatness upon you and you're projecting greatness upon yourself. And with greatness comes the responsibility of, now, as soon as you walk in the gym, you need to be ready to go. You're on go, because you can be competitive in the games, but now you need to be a leader everywhere, because the practices will go as you go. Your energy will dictate your team's energy, because if you're the leader, if you're the superstar, then that means that everyone is following your lead. And, you know, I think that we've seen the yin and the yang of his ability to be that person. We've seen it at the Nike Hoop Summit with Team World. I think we got a very different behind the scenes look than we got this year when he was playing with Team USA. And likewise, I think, you know, and I wasn't at the practices for the McDonald's game, but, you know, just seeing him warm up and, you know, the effort he put in, it wasn't the mentality that you want heading into live action. Because I do think that when your best player sets the tone in a certain way, good or bad, the team can follow. So it's not a detriment. It's 2 data points. And, you know, we don't have those same data points for like Darren Peterson. We have them for Cam, who's very consistent across the board. We don't have them for AJ. So, but I think with that, you have to be on at all times. You're the man. If you're the man, you're the man.
I think those are all fair points, Corey. And I think I love the Uncle Ben point you made, right? With great power, great responsibility. And it all makes sense, right? Like, that's ultimately where he finds himself, because he's such a supremely talented player. And on the offensive side of the ball, right, as we kind of wrap up his offense, like he has such a he has such an innate special scoring ability that's so fluid, that's so natural to him. And with that comes that kind of arrogance or confidence, however you want to characterize it, right? But something that I think you and I are looking for, and that's something that we noticed while seeing him in Portland, is that it's not enough to just be like, oh, I'm the star, but you also have to lead accordingly and be able to inspire your team to run with you. And, you know, Corey, you know, with that being said, like, that type of star player, that type of attraction is what brings us to the stadium. And, you know, coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about his defense. But before we do, we have some exciting stuff from Gametime. Sorry. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. And with the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. And, you know, Gametime really helps make all that possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And we're kind of in baseball season right now. We're getting close to the playoffs. And they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. This is something that I can speak on personally as someone who loves going to baseball games. I live in Los Angeles now, but, you know, whenever the Yankees are in town, whether it's for, against the Dodgers or the Angels. I'm always trying to get in, but also not trying to break the bank, to be totally honest. And there have been a couple of times where Game Time has kind of come to the rescue, and we've been able to find really great seats, especially look, if you live in the Los Angeles area, Southern California area, you want a good deal on a ticket, use the Game Time app and go to an Angels game. You're going to get a great deal. But ultimately, the great thing about the Game Time app is it takes the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Make sure to download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's a good deal. And terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back, Corey, and now we get to another really fun aspect of AJ Dybantsa's game. We're going to talk about his defense. And Corey, for me, before I throw it over to you, one of my biggest takeaways, and whenever we do these high school kids coming into college, we always kind of put that disclaimer out there that it is a difficult eval for us, considering where they're coming from, the context, the responsibility that they have on the offensive side of the ball to be, the kind of the catalyst in the engine. And that takes a lot of energy and takes a lot of, power, to do all that. But on the defensive side of the ball, where I kind of ended up walking away when it came to AJ Dybantsa, and I think we saw a lot of this in Portland as well, is I think he's got all the ability. I think he's got the skill set. I think he's got the tool set to be a really good defender. But Corey, the way that we ended his offensive scout, we talked a little bit about that leadership stuff, the buy-in, the responsibility that comes with that. And I think for AJ Dybantsa to hit his ultimate ceiling of being a superstar player, I do believe there is a little bit of tightening that's going to have to happen for him on the defensive side of the ball. And for me personally, Corey, I thought it was a little bit of concentration, a little bit of effort, a little bit of buy-in. But once again, I don't want to kind of put that out there and say that he's not a good defender or that he's lazy or any of that. That's not the narrative that I'm trying to create. I think just the context in high school, it kind of led to some bad habits at times. But Corey, the ultimate point that I'm trying to make with Dybantsa is that when he's bought in, when he's locked in, when he's giving full effort, I think he can be a very dynamic defensive player. And so, Corey, if you can share a little bit with us what you saw from AJ Dybantsa on the defensive side of the ball.
I think he's pretty tremendous when he's locked in. He is everything you want in a swing wing defender who is just switchable, basically 1 through 4, because he's big, he's strong, he's long, he's got fluid hips, and he's got smooth feet. So when he can really get into your shirt and take away space. And when he does, he's got really quick hands. If you are lazy with your dribble, he will poke it away. He'll turn defense into offense. I think that he has all the tools, and I think when he is on ball, he is mostly pretty engaged, especially when there's a matchup in which, he can kind of take it personally and step up to that challenge. So I'm pretty optimistic about his two-way potential, as a defender on top of his special offensive. Now, where I agree that he has improvement areas are that I think that he can get a little sloppy in the details, like you mentioned sometimes, specifically, off the ball. I think a lot of times he should get way more blocks as a weak side help, low man rotating into the paint. If you look at where his blocks come from, right, and he's just under 1 block a game, 0.8. They're oftentimes on the ball blocks, which are great because you see the anticipation, you see the timing, you see the just natural ability to lock in and defend and use your recovery tools. But I think, somebody that athletic, that strong, you should be sliding over and protecting the rim in a real way. That's something that in high school, I feel like Ace, and even in college, Ace Bailey, a guy I think he'll probably get some comps to, did a really great job of doing as a defender and using that athleticism, that hop, that spring in his leg. I also think that he could be lazy at times, and I've seen him do it to perfection, but I've more seen him maybe be a little sloppy where he is closing out off the ball. And he tends to bite on pump fakes when guys do just give him that little up fake, and he'll bite and he'll fly by contest. And that's tough because what that does is now you're playing 5-on-4,
Yeah.
right? Because he's taking himself out of the play. But I've seen him choppy feet, like high hand. I've seen him do that too. So it's not a talent issue. It's not an ability issue. Like if you were to say good defender, bad defender, I would say good, like without hesitation. But like you said, it's high school. So it's like, he's probably not going to be as good on the ball when there are more talented scorers who are more physical, because now college basketball is full of grown men and he's going to be playing in a very tough conference. I still think he's going to be tremendous there if he puts his mind to it. But some of the little things, like coaches aren't going to like the stuff off ball that he kind of loses focus in. That's where things really hurt you because you're creating advantages in scramble situations when you're a little lazy.
Right. Corey, I love the point that you made. Like right now, if you're asking good defender, bad defender, you're probably going to say good defender. Right?
Really good. Even.
Yeah. Really good. And I love the point that you made. There's some real film. Like they were playing against, I think it was Dream City. There was one where ball swings second side. And the way that he attacked that closeout, well, sorry, not attack, but the way that he went out to the shooter, you mentioned choppy feet, high hands. I was like, oh, I wrote that in my notes. I was like, I'm really happy that I saw this, right? And the fact that he has that potential to him, ability to him. And ultimately, Corey, like, as you said, as he gets to the college level, there might be a little bit of an adjustment, right, to the strength and whatever. But if we're projecting, right, and that's what we do, right, as draft analysts, we project 5, 10, 15 years down the road. I think the skill set and natural ability that he has, plus the instincts, makes him a really tantalizing defensive prospect. And Corey, to your point about some of the stuff off ball, right? I agree that there were definitely some opportunities for him to come in and have some blocks and just overall contest more at the rim. But there also were a couple possessions where he was a low man and like they would like throw a lob backside or whatever and he would just fly in and use his length. I know he doesn't have a crazy wingspan, but he's a big wing and he's got good length to him, and he would make some like free safety type of interceptions. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm glad that there's this film as well, because Corey, I feel like the point that we're both trying to make is that when it comes to evaluating high school defensive film, we're not making any definitive statements or even definitive conclusions. It's more of what are we seeing on the film and are there good things we can take away to get excited about the future and about what it can be. And another point that I wanted to make, Corey, is defensively, I liked some of the blocks that he had. Just, sometimes he'd get beat by a smaller guard, but the way that he would, he would just chase them down and have some pretty nice blocks. That was encouraging to see as well. And once again, we're, like you said before, we're taking data points, right? Taking this, a little bit of that. And overall, we're just trying to land in a place where we feel good about him as a defensive prospect. And overall, Corey, once again, we're talking about him as a top 3 guy. The fact that he has this film makes you excited about his two-way potential. And we see guys like a Jason Tatum and the way that he can be such an offensive engine, but also be Boston's best perimeter defender, right? And the way that he can take on the assignment of guarding superstars day in and day out is such an exciting thing. And Corey, speaking of Jason Tatum, obviously we're going to have some comps for AJ Dybantsa and what type of player he might be. And we'll get right into them after this break. Now, this is the part of the pod, Corey, where I think we have the most fun. Also, this is the part of the pod where we've gotten some shade from the Tylers recently. It's all love, obviously. We hate them, we love them, we hate them, we hate them. But obviously, when it comes to AJ Dybantsa, when you get a talented wing like this with the ability that he has, a lot of different guys are going to come to mind. And because it's a top 3 guy, we might throw around some big names, right? Because we're excited. And Corey, I've got a name for you, and I'm more along the line of where I usually come from with like a 90s, 2000s comp, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to share first. Who are some guys from the past that, you watch them and you watch AJ and you're like, oh man, like I see a connection between these 2 guys or 3 guys or whatever?
Okay. So I think that when we're talking high-level guys, when we're talking to Darren Peterson, when we're talking to Cam Boozer, when we're talking to AJ Dybantsa, and we're calling this class at the top an all-time draft, right? I feel good about comparing them to all-time players because that is what they will need to do if this is going to be a memorable draft. So when I say I think there's Tracy McGrady and AJ Dybantsa, I feel good about it. That's something that came out of, I think I said that out loud at the 2024 Nike Hoop Summit, where I was like, that's T-Mac. Now here's the thing with T-Mac though, right? What was it, the difference between T-Mac and Kobe? We infamously compared Darren to a young Kobe on the No Ceilings pod. But what was the difference that people said between Kobe and T-Mac? It was the effort, the work ethic, the want to be the best ever, the killer, the Mamba mentality, right?
Yeah.
That is going to be the question in the separator on, does he get to that level? Does he surpass that level? Because as a scorer, I mean, look, I tried. I looked for old Tracy McGrady high school film. You could find highlights, and it's impressive and whatnot. But the highlights are highlights. It's just the highs. So T-Mac was young, raw, at the same spot. You can argue, I'm sure, that like AJ is more polished given the evolution of the game. But I think AJ is a good passer with a lot of room to grow. I think that he certainly is not making like really nuanced like pick and roll reads to the weak side. I think he fails to read the help defender quite often, and so maybe Tracy McGrady is the polished version of him. The Hall of Fame version of him is a better playmaker, sure, but at the same age, I don't know, right? Like I think there is a pretty realistic world where AJ's averaging 5.5 assists per game down the line, not as like your primary initiator playmaker, but like as a guy who's making the most out of leveraging his scoring to make plays for his teammates to the best of his ability. Of course, that's going to come with film work and just studying the game and wanting to be great, but he has the natural ability to do some of it too. That's going to go to his defense, right? He's athletic. Is he as athletic as Tracy McGrady? We'll see. I think he's had some moments where you can project that out, right? Yeah. He's creative. I mean, you look at NBA forwards now. I mean, you're going to go to Jason Tatum, right? Like maybe on the low end, you go to Andrew Wiggins. I don't think this is a Josh Jackson situation.
No.
Like, I think that there's a very real floor for AJ. And that floor is like an all-star level player, maybe not a consistent all-star,
sure,
but an all-star level player. So I feel good. I feel fine saying, hey, I think that AJ Dybantsa has some Tracy McGrady potential. It's not saying that he's going to be the next Tracy McGrady.
Right.
It's not. But I think there is that potential. I think he could be a 30-point per game scorer. I think he could do 35 and 5, with two-way ability. Whether that leads to wins or not, as it didn't really ever materialize for Tracy McGrady, is going to be on AJ and how he approaches his professionalism in his career, and maybe that has to go where he ends up as on his first team and the habits he learns. But I'm cool with it. I don't know if that's a name that you've thought of, but that's the name that I'm rocking with.
Corey, I love all of that, right? T-Mac, I remember distinctly you saying T-Mac when we were at the 2024 Hoop Summit. And even in the moment, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love the Jason Tatum call out as well. And we just mentioned why, right? It could be a good comp for him. I get it. These are all lofty expectations. And what I wanted to do today, actually, Corey, you mentioned his floor. You mentioned a guy that could be, like an all-star-ish player. Maybe he's not an all-star not a perennial all-star, but a guy who could make one or two all-star games. The guy that came to mind for me was Anton Jamison. Yeah. So when we're talking about his floor, I thought of a guy like Anton. Exactly. So Anton, right, like AJ Dybantsa, similar size, 6'9", was a guy who was a toolsy forward, a guy who could really handle the ball, comfortable in the mid-range, mid-post, incredible footwork, herky-jerky. Like, there's something about Anton Jamison where he was a guy who was just comfortable on every part of the floor and was such a dynamic offensive player that you could pretty much just write him down for 20 points a game for most of his career. And if you think about if he played in the modern day, he would have taken way more threes, and then he'd probably be averaging like 23, 24, 25 points per game. And Anton was the guy who came to mind just because, once again, like the size similarities are there, the offensive leaning game to him. Now, I think AJ is going to be a better defender than Anton was, but if you look at Anton Jamison's career as a whole, right, the success that he had on the Warriors and then going to the Wizards and, playing a lot of tough battles with like the Cavs, in the playoffs with Gilbert Arenas and Larry Hughes, and then eventually going over to the Cavs when he was like in his late prime. I think Anton had a very successful Mavs as well. That's true. Mavs, he averaged like 17 points a game as a 35-year-old, right? So he was a walking bucket for all his career pretty much. And when I look at AJ, I wonder, okay, let's say the superstar potential never happens because of X, Y, and Z reason. I think at the very least, he'd be an Anton Jamison type of player. And ultimately, Corey, if you're going to get an Anton Jamison in this draft, I think that type of player deserves to be, and once again, his floor deserves to be in that type of conversation where we're talking about him being a potential top 3 guy. And so with that being said, Corey, I think it's been a lot of fun for us to talk about guys like Cam Boozer and AJ Dybantsa. And obviously there are more guys that we're excited to share with our listeners. And guys, for our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us once again and for making us your very first listen of the day. We've got more prospects, more guys to talk about. We're really excited about it. Lock in with us. Can't wait to talk more. I'm Albert. He's Corey. Talk to you guys soon.